Good afternoon, everyone. We have breaking news here in the News Nation Weather Center. I'm meteorologist Gerard Jabali, and we are now tracking a landfalling hurricane Zeta right now. A lot going on, and this has just been an incredibly active hurricane season, breaking records left and right. And we're breaking another one right now as the fifth named system has made landfall, or is making landfall right now into Louisiana as a Category 2 hurricane, mind you. This is Hurricane Zeta, again, 110 mile per hour wind sustained, moving at a pretty fast speed here, north-northeast at 24 miles per hour, and it continues to bring the heavy rain and strong to damaging winds across Louisiana, coastal Louisiana. This one seems to be taking a pretty direct aim near the New Orleans area, so some concerns about those folks as we're seeing again, the eye wall now pushing ashore. You can see that there on the Doppler radar as it's now moving inland. Right now, the center of circulation is still over a large amount of mostly uninhabited wetland, but getting ready to continue to move north here very quickly, impacting places like we talked about, some of those larger areas of population, with one of them being New Orleans. All right, the picture zoomed out just a little bit. You can pick out New Orleans, Gulfport, Mississippi, feeling some of the effects all the way over to Baton Rouge as well. And we'll continue to see the storm moving inland at a fast enough pace where we will see impacts felt in just the next 24 to 36 hours. This is going to race on through off to the north and east, reaching all the way up near the Washington, D.C. area. So let's go over what's expected. Now, something else to notice, there is that tornado watch that's in effect. So not just the hurricane, but we also have to deal with a lot of other impacts. We, of course, will be dealing with heavy rain, wind, storm surge, and the possibility of flooding, although that may not be as big of a factor with this storm. It's moving very quickly, which is a good thing as far as the rain is concerned. But we'll go on and talk about that in a little more detail. Here's something interesting and very much hashtag 2020. While this is happening, over there in Oklahoma, just a couple states away, they're dealing with a major debilitating ice storm right now. This has just still been going on. So amazing. We have an ice storm happening just up the road almost there in Oklahoma. Meanwhile, the tropics are still going. So here's a satellite picture of Zeta. And as you notice, it looked like it had some strengthening just before making landfall. Kind of interesting. Now, Zeta itself has stayed fairly on the low end of the Saffir-Simpson scale, but just before making landfall was upgraded to a Category 2 storm. And there it is. And right now, it's going to reach its peak, but from here on out, it should continue to weaken. But the interesting thing is usually the Gulf of Mexico is very warm, very favorable waters. Now the temperatures have been down a bit. They're down to around 80 degrees, 79 degrees. Most of the season, we've seen those numbers up near 85, sometimes even 87 degrees Fahrenheit. So there was a lot more fuel before, but as you see, even though with those temperatures down a bit, we still had a strengthening storm able to reach Category 2 strength. So let's hope hurricane season continues to dwindle from here on out, but it has been an incredible one. Let's go over some of the impacts now. The storm surge certainly being felt, especially across coastal Louisiana and all the way into coastal Mississippi through Gulfport. You could see anywhere from 3 feet on the high end, 5 to 6 feet of storm surge. That's going to be mainly right there at the mouth of the Mississippi River. We always are concerned about New Orleans with any sort of hurricane strikes because, as you may or may not know, New Orleans sitting below sea level is always a big concern for flooding. And storm surge will be a potential concern as we move through the next, say, 4 to 6 hours. Now, still could reach storm surge as far to the east as Mobile, Alabama. The wind pushing all that water ashore could lead to some more of that flooding. But storm surge are concerned with any of those coastal areas. By now, they're almost used to it. 5 landfalling systems this season alone in Louisiana. Incredible. All right, let's go through a little bit of what we can expect with this system as it moves inland. So from here on out, it is going to race off to the north and east. There it goes as it moves past Mobile, Alabama, Birmingham, eventually through southern parts of Tennessee, the mountains in North Carolina, and then blasting offshore in the Atlantic as it has weakened and pretty much falls apart. But some of that rainfall going to be felt all the way up towards, as you heard, Washington, D.C., some of the impacts from it. the wind will eventually die down. But we're going to talk a little bit about the wind here. It's going to be an interesting thing because the storm system is moving fairly quickly. So the last update, before this latest one here at 4 o'clock, you know, we had winds inside still around 100 miles per hour, but the system itself is moving around 20 to 25 miles per hour. When that happens, one side of the storm, you have to add that forward speed, and the other side, you subtract it. So if you have one side of the storm where the winds may be blowing 75 miles per hour, you have to add on the forward speed, 25 miles per hour, that makes it 100. But the other side, you subtract it, so a 75 mile per hour wind will actually be more like a 50 mile per hour wind. Big difference just depending on that forward speed. So there you go, one side of the storm, you'll feel 20 miles per hour or 25 miles per hour stronger than the other. So the right side or the east side of the storm is likely going to have the strongest winds as it moves in. We could still see winds gusting 65 to 70 miles per hour as it moves in through Alabama, possibly into Georgia. I think by the time it gets to the Carolinas, we may not see as many wind gusts over hurricane strength. We may see some still tropical storm strength, which is 40 to around 73 mile per hour winds gusting. So we'll keep an eye on that. The wind is not going to be a huge factor, but it is going to bring down some tree limbs and things as it comes down, knocking out power near the Gulf Coast, no doubt. Still Category 2 storm, so it's going to cause some power outages, damage, things of that nature. Could be worse, of course, could be a Category 3, but Category 2 storm is still strong enough to cause plenty of issues regardless of it being a major hurricane. All right, let's go into the rainfall. Again, we talked about this earlier. Because it's moving so quickly, that's actually to the advantage that it's not sitting around for a very long time, not dropping a ton of rainfall all at once, and all in the same spot. Thankfully, it's moving fast enough where we may not see a huge problem with rain. There'll still be some isolated pockets of flooding, but instead of seeing the 12 inches of rain or more with these systems that we often see, we may only see somewhere along the lines of 3 to 6 inches of rainfall. But that could stretch pretty far inland, as you see, all the way up toward Virginia. We could be seeing 2 to perhaps 3 inches of rainfall from the system, but by then it will be weakening quite a bit. Now let's go back into the way this whole season has gone. We are very hurricane weary, so much to a point where I'm sure a lot of people are just ignoring what's going on. You can't do that necessarily. These systems are still dangerous, still cause damage, but it has been an exhausting season, and I don't blame anyone for feeling that way when you've gone through this many names. Now, the furthest we've ever gone in the names list was to Zeta, and that was back in 2005. We've tied the record this year, and we've reached all the way to that point with Zeta. One thing to note, back in 2005, we might have reached Zeta on the actual names list, but they actually had one more storm that went unnamed. 2005 was such an active season that they realized, the Hurricane Center, after the fact, after a storm had happened, that they totally missed it. It was out there, a small one, but it occurred and it should have gotten named, but they just missed it. It was just so crazy. But now we are looking at, again, tying that record. Looks like we have a live shot here. Where's this one from? Mobile, Alabama. Wow. Very churned up waters, as you can see. It doesn't look like the wind is incredibly strong. You can even see a few people walking on the beach, maybe someone with a surfboard. But the waves are certainly kicked up pretty strong with that onshore flow. The rain doesn't look like it's falling too heavily there at that point yet. It looks like we will get there, but Mobile, Alabama, going to feel the impacts from Zeta as it moves inland. And the winds will pick up. The storm surge will continue to get worse as well. So we've gone so far down the names list, and now we were already with a broken record for 2020 in that we had 10 landfalls in the continental U.S. Now we're up to 11. We surpassed the old record before, which was set back in 1916. These records go back to 1851, so pretty incredible. 2020 does it again there. Let's show you some of those storms that made landfall. Here's a sort of a map of them all. Look how many just clobbered into Louisiana. Laura, a Category 4 monster. We had Delta. We had Cristobal. Of course, we had Marco. And then Zeta. So 5 systems moving inland, 2 Category 2 hurricanes, 1 Category 4, and then 2 tropical storms. So a number of systems, and they all seem to take aim on the Gulf Coast. Surprisingly, Florida, which sticks way out there, has been missed this year. Go figure. Isn't that incredible that Florida could get missed out of all those storms, but poor Louisiana, one after the other. All right, in October, as we wind down, normally in a typical season, we would see 1 to 2 named storms, with one of those becoming a hurricane. Well, this is not a typical season. This is an active season. Normally we would see 4 to 6 named storms with 1 to 2 hurricanes. We've even surpassed those numbers. So this has just been a non-stop season. We are hoping we can get things to quiet down. But again, Zeta making landfall at this moment. Another view of the radar here as this happens. I don't know if we have any questions from viewers, any comments from viewers right now.
We do have some people, yeah, just a lot of praying. Someone said, "Bring it on." So,
wow. Well, it was that's an interesting way to think about it. But stay strong, I guess. But this has been one of those things that they're very weary of hurricanes in Louisiana. So, what we are going to be doing is watching this system as it moves inland. Again, very concerned for areas like New Orleans, as they're going to be taking the brunt of this system. They've been missed by the other 4 for the most part, being spared the worst of those impacts, but still seeing some impacts from those. Now we're getting the worst of it with Zeta near New Orleans. But overall, the system is still going to spread inland very quickly and bringing heavy rainfall winds, and again, the tornado threat that's going to go on throughout the evening. And Chief Meteorologist Albert Ramon will be tracking this with the latest information starting at 7 p.m. on News Nation, so make sure you're tuning in for the latest there. We will be watching this very carefully. This is the big weather story, but not the only one, as we talked about. There's still the ice storm going on. So, such an incredible year. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them right there below. But we'll be continuing to watch this situation throughout tonight. So make sure you're tuning in, starting at 7 p.m. on WGN America. Have a great afternoon.